Friday the 26th.
This is James Holder for iFL TV in association with Matchings Jim Marbella. I'm in Liverpool Hilton Hotel. They've just had the press conference for the 26th. With me, I've got the Matchroom head honcho, Eddie Hearn. What's happening, Ed?
Nice to have some proper questions for a change.
Thank you, sir.
I think me and Quig might be getting a bit too pally for the questions. You seem to be a bit more focused these days, James.
Thanks, Ed. That's really kind of you to say. Let's talk a little bit about this card first and foremost. David Price, he's returned to Liverpool. Again, working with the Sowlands on a co-feature. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've done a lot of work with the Sowlands lately in terms of TV rights, in terms of Paul Smith against Arthur Abraham, Nathan Cleverley against Jürgen Bremer, and we wanted to come back with Liverpool with Tony and Rocky and Callum, and delighted to add David Price to that. You know, sat down with Nissa and Calla. He hasn't boxed here in nearly 2 years, a huge draw in Liverpool still, and excited to bring David Price back there. We've been working on some really interesting names from the world rankings, and then the Tepper fight come up for the European title, so they're trying to close that off at the moment. They've got purse bids on Tuesday, so if it's going to be Tepper for the European, great. If not, I think people are going to be pleased with the other options as well from a world scene. But what an exciting time for British heavyweight boxing. Obviously Fury could get a shot at Klitschko. You've got Price now in the mix. You know, Anthony Joshua's looking red hot. You know, DILLIAN WHYTE going well. It's a great time for British heavyweight boxing.
Nearly 2 years since we've seen David Price back in Liverpool. Since then, those 2 defeats he spoke about today, to Tony Thompson. Do you think he's exercised the demons with the 4 fights he's had in?
Do you know what? When he was talking, I don't know if you got the same impression as well, but you can tell, you kind of forget what he went through in Liverpool. You know, he was filling arenas for Audley Harrison, knocked him out in a round, and then all of a sudden, the Tony Thompson fight. I mean, I remember when we got our exclusive deal with Sky a couple of years ago. Sky wanted me to work with David Price, and I spoke to Frank Maloney at the time and David Price, and I tried to make it happen. They didn't want to, because I think it was all a little bit bitter, you know, with the way the rights turned out. Then he fought Tony Thompson and got stopped. Then he fought him again, and obviously got beat again. He calls it mismanagement. Maybe he's right, but
what do you call it?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he just wasn't ready. I mean, Tony Thompson's a seasoned pro, he's a southpaw. You know, it's not really my job to criticise other people's management, but if that's what he feels, then he probably knows better than anyone. But what I'm trying to get at is he's gone from hero to zero in Liverpool. Then he's gone on the road with Sowlands, and he's sort of redeveloped his confidence in his career. Now he's going to be back in a really big fight, one that he could lose. I mean, if he hasn't recovered from those defeats, and that's why I asked him the question about returning to the Echo, you know. So how would it feel being back in the change rooms and the same walkways and the entrances? Because the last time he was there, or the last 2 times he was there, he got knocked out. So he needs to make a big statement. He knows that in himself, and I think he'll do it. I think he sounds up for it. He seems like he's on top of everything, but he'll be in a tough fight, and you know, hopefully he can come through it and pave the way for those big domestic clashes.
That's what I mean. There's some mouth-watering clashes looking ahead. Obviously, the emergence of Anthony Joshua. What qualms would you have with putting Anthony Joshua in with someone like David Price within the next 6 months?
No, 100%. That's the aim. That's where he's got to be. You got Kevin Johnson on May the 30th. You know, I like the DILLIAN WHYTE fight. I like the David Price fight. I love the Tyson Fury fight. You know, they're all fights that he will fight one of those. You know, between whether it's Price, White, Chisora, Fury, he will fight at least one of those this year, and that will come, you know, in September. So fans are about to really enjoy the heavyweight division over here again, because when Anthony Joshua is fighting David Price, or Anthony Joshua is fighting DILLIAN WHYTE, this is going to be really, really exciting, and it's going to be huge for British boxing, and we're only a few months away. So just let us do it right, and let us manage the career of Anthony Joshua in the perfect way that we are so far. You will have a great time watching this British domestic heavyweight scene unfold.
Do you think DILLIAN WHYTE will be the man to sort of stop this political correctness from Anthony? Sometimes he comes across.
Yeah, I think you might see that from in the Kevin Johnson fight. I mean, you saw a little bit of that in the ring after the, you know, but that was, you know,
he went, good luck.
Yeah, but he, you know, I think you'll see that in the press conference with Kevin Johnson. But yeah, for sure, if we made the DILLIAN WHYTE fight, you'd see it. I mean, Anthony's not a pussycat. Do you know what I mean? He's media savvy, but he can have it. Don't worry about that. He can have it.
It's not for
Big
me
time.
to tell the media how he acts and how he does it. He just
He-
off away
he's-
from camera, he seems a bit more out. He comes out.
He
of
is,
himself a
yeah,
little
but I
bit
think he's a role model. He's good for the game. He's media trained because of his stuff with GB in the Olympics. He's polite. He's respectful. He's all the things a role model should be. And I know that us on the Twitter and slagging off and loud mouthing and but he's not always going to be like that. You'll see it, but he's also concerned about being a role model, and I think that should be, I think that's a credit to him, and that should be admired rather than just saying, "Come on, call him that, call him that." He has a responsibility also to the next generation and to the kids to be a role model and try and develop the sport. What do you want? Do you want a role model for boxing being this big, loud, horrible, arrogant, bad, foul-mouthed bruiser? Or do you want him to be an athlete who talks well, knows about making mistakes, coming back, inspiring people? Maybe this isn't a time for the genre to have this conversation with the genre of your audience, but however they feel, we have a responsibility to promote the sport of boxing positively to kids, and I think he's the perfect role model.
On the flip side of that, you've got someone who's beaten before in the amateurs, who's not had any media training, who's from Brixton, who's a little bit rough around the edges, and he's not afraid to speak his mind. So, as I said, back to my original question, do you think that could be the person that brings him right out?
Yeah, sure. But Anthony's not come. He didn't grow up next door to me. Do you know what I mean? So he's he didn't go to public school. He didn't. He wasn't brought up by the high society. So I think sometimes the opinion of Anthony Joshua is, especially from other fighters as well, that he is like that. But he's got a story too. But yeah, I think the build up to those kind of fights would be great. It will bring Anthony out of himself. I think even Kevin Johnson will bring Anthony out of that comfort zone of being the ambassador and a role model, which is fine. You can come. You don't have to. I always feel like fighters should never pretend. It shouldn't be on. And he's not trying to pretend to put on this front. He is a really nice guy. But when you snap, and it's okay to be exposed in that way.
Everyone's
it's just
got
passion.
levels,
Yeah, of course they have. It might take someone 20 minutes to make me lose my temper. Or it might take Joshua a minute. We don't know yet. But everyone, if you're passionate about something and you're vocal and you want to be heard, I don't mind that. You just got to be careful not to go over the line. And in a fight like Joshua against White, you do have to be careful of that kind of thing.
Today, I said on the bill also, Callum Smith taking on Christopher Rabras. Great fight. Chance for him to make a real statement if he can not deal with him better than George Groves did, but maybe stop him. It's a big statement for him.
It's the absolute perfect fight for Callum Smith. I mean, we had a little bit of stick from the Birmingham show because, as I was saying, we're developing these fighters, and 4 or 5 fighters are ready to go now. You won't see them in those kind of fights again. I'm talking about Callum Smith, I'm talking about Luke Campbell, I'm talking about Cal Yafai, I'm even talking about Anthony Joshua, the way he's going to be progressed now. Callum, number 3 in the WBC, will fight Rabras, big, tall super middleweight, gave Groves a great fight. He's ranked, I think, 7 or 8 in the WBC. Win this, straight into a final eliminator for Callum Smith, and then he'll get the winner of Groves against Bellew Jack. Perfect position, perfect fight, perfect timing. I mean, I'm not one to blow my own trumpet, James, but the progression and the job we've done with Callum Smith has been absolutely perfect, and that's even with a big hand operation that kept him out for 7 months. He is 1 or 2 fights away from winning the world super middleweight title.
With the relationship you've got with Sauerland, could it be made without having a final eliminator? If George Groves does
maybe,
beat Bellew Jack,
for sure. I don't think Groves is going to be rushing to fight Callum. If Callum can do the job on Rabras that I think he'll do, I don't think George or Bellew Jack will be rushing to fight Callum. So, in that case, it's lovely to have the route of the final eliminator to make sure you do get that world title shot. So, with the Sauerlands, obviously Tony Bellew on this card. We've agreed terms, but we've virtually agreed terms for Tony to fight Hernandez for the IBF title after he fights Ramirez this summer. Tony will fight Lubos Suda, who's sort of your traditional tough gatekeeper, if you like, on the cruiserweight division. Tony's been out for 8 months, time he gets in the ring.
Don't seem that long, does it?
No, I know. So he'll have this fight, all being well, touch wood. he'll come through and he'll fight Hernandez for the world title in probably September, October.
Would you say Juan Pablo Hernandez is the best in the division, in your opinion?
I think technically, he's a tough, tricky southpaw. He's big, he bangs hard. Got some great cruiserweights. I mean, the champions are phenomenal. Marco Hook, massive cruiserweight. Lebedev, really, really tough. Gregory Ziod, WBC champ. I mean, they're all really, really tough fights. I just feel like with Hernandez's inactivity, that he could be Tony's best chance to win the world title. So it'll be him. And again, great to be working with Salins and doing the Bray McCleverly fight more than likely in September as well. So a couple of great chances for our guys to win world titles.
Rocky Fielding in action on the same card against Brian Vera. I don't have to be a knob and list off all the opponents that Brian Vera has faced. I can do if you really want me to. We both know who he's fought and what level he's been at. Rocky Fielding, do you think this is the perfect time to fight Brian Vera? I mean, he's 33, he's had such a credible record, he's still there. Is it the perfect time for Rocky Fielding to fight him?
I think it's the perfect fight. I think Vera's motivated. He's fought at a very high level. People say, Vera's finished. But let's be honest, who's Rocky Fielding boxed?
Gonzalez.
Yeah, that was a great win, but you'd still fancy Vera to beat Gonzalez every day of the week. Great win against Luke Blackledge, but this is the fight that Rocky Fielding needs. He's top 15 in all the governing bodies, and really from there, he's probably the same as Callum Smith. And people talk about the Callum Smith against Rocky Fielding fight. I love that fight, but I just feel like for the British title, I obviously represent both guys. Both guys are 1, 2, 3 fights away from the world title. I kind of feel like that fight should be a final eliminator for the world title, or even for the world title.
Do you think you'd be selling one of them short if you'd done it at British level?
Possibly. It is a great fight, and I always say when we're talking about these huge fights, when people say it could be bigger when both guys have got a world title or whatever, and I always say I disagree with that. Let's make that now. Normally, I'm referring to fights that are for a world title. I talked about Groves against De Gale potentially for the IBF. I said, let's do it now. People said, well, what if they... That was for a vacant world title. Let's wait till they both win a world title. Might not happen. Frampton, the IBF said, let's do it now. Wait till they've both got one. So for the British title, it's just a little bit different. I feel like we can still build them. If they want to do it after Rebras and Vera, they both get the wins, it's a big fight. But I just feel like it should have something a little bit bigger attached to it.
Any confirmation on the Cobra? Will we fight again? Will he not fight again?
Oh, here we go.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, just finishing off negotiations.
How's it going?
Fantastic.
It's very one-sided as usual.
I always do well.
He just says,
"This is one-sided." It is one-sided. Eddie always wins.
He says, "This is what you're paying me," and you ain't fucking saying nothing else. Anyway, let me finish this.
Go on, I'm listening.
All right, go on. What are we talking about? The Cobra?
Me, are you?
No, well, I'll finish you. Only lasted one sentence. Right, he says,
It's the story of my life.
I said he's moved into acting. He's got a world title shot, and let's hope he wins it.
He's going to win it. It's not if, buts, when, how. He's going to win it.
Good. Anyway, Carl Froch, I think...
But did you know Carl Froch knocked out George Groves in front of 80,000?
Yeah, but he chopped down a lot of trees.
He swam as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Did he?
He did.
A lot of swimming.
I asked Rob McGregor, he said he didn't do either. But,
yeah, Robert's a straight man.
But people didn't realise that Carl was actually messing. But I said to him, people don't understand.
He wasn't.
He was. But people don't... He goes,
you're supposed to carry on. You're destroying the interview.
Carl went to me, how funny was that? Did you see what I said to Mayweather? I went, Carl, no one realised you were joking. They all think you're an arsehole.
I've just got to say this. Listen, Carl is not like that. He's actually a really good guy, and he is funny. He does have a laugh and does tell funny jokes. But he's got
a very dry sense of humour.
But he doesn't.
Like someone will walk past him and say, Carl, I'm a massive fan. I've followed you all around the world. Can I have an autograph? He goes, no. Walk off, and I'll go. Like when I first started promoting, I went, Carl, you can't do that. He went, I'm only joking. Where's he gone? And then by that time, the bloke's gone, and he's told his whole phone book that Carl Froch is the biggest knob he's ever made.
Doesn't matter though, mate, because he knocked out George Groves
in front of 80,000.
Exactly. And he chopped down trees.
Yeah. So, we've been looking for a fight that motivates him, and we've had this interview 100 times. I'm just not sure there is one. So, I gave a couple of interviews, people saying, oh, you haven't spoke very well about Carl Froch in the interviews. All I've said was, the way he fights, if he's not motivated and he's not up for it, there's no value. Carl Froch has to be 110% motivated to perform the way he can perform. What does he don't need money. He doesn't need legacy. And like people say, doesn't he want to revenge the loss to Andre Ward? The answer is not. Like, he's not saying, I won't be able to sleep at night if I don't beat Andre Ward again. He's going, do you know what? I like to have a war, and Andre Ward is so boring to fight. That's what Carl Froch says.
Yeah. What about Froch Golovkin?
I like that fight, and he likes it in a sick way. But again, why would you do that fight? What are the reasons? One,
for
to
the
fight.
For a war, like you said.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're 38 and like you got millions in the bank and you've had so many wars in your career, don't get me wrong, Joe. If you've still got the fire to have that war, but if you're like, you can't go into a fight with Golovkin like, can you? You got to go. Do you know what? I really want to fight Golovkin. I want to prove myself against the best. I can show everyone I can beat him. But I'm not sure he's got that mentality anymore. I'm just being honest. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, and that's not his fault. That's just the feeling in his heart. And if that's the feeling, he has to retire. But something might come up where he might say, you know what, I want that, and that might happen. But waffle.
What are the two biggest fights we can expect to see within this year? It doesn't have to be from your stable. It can be from any
I can tell you the fights I want to make, but the ones that will happen or not.
I don't want you to put a bock on them and curse them. So.
I think what you're gonna see is Joshua against Price or Joshua against White. I think you're gonna see one of those this year. I think you're gonna see Frampton against Quigg this year. I do believe that. I do believe you'll see that fight because, look, I'm sure they're both going to do well for themselves when they box in July. But I think when they realise what they could have won, and they turn around and go, let's just do this rather than stop faffing around. And I think the teams, their team will realise that as well.
Got to say, you put your bank details on that.
I know it hasn't gone down very well with the bank, to be honest with you. So we've had to change a few accounts. Yeah, we've had to change a few accounts.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. I think you might see Brooke Khan. You could see DeGale Groves if they would both win the world title. There's so many. It's just boxing, and people say, why can't you make Frampton against Quig? They made Mayweather Pacquiao. Well, it took them 5 years to make that fight. So we've been trying for 3 or 4 months. So they will happen. But in the meantime, we have to keep making relevant fights. And I feel like, we've announced 2 shows this week with Price and Callum against Rabras and Rocky against Fielding and Bellew. And of course Manchester with Quigg against Martinez, Crawler against Perez, Joshua, Foot against Eggington and Nurse against... these are quality fights. Obviously we've got May the 30th coming up as well. So we've got some really big shows coming this summer. But of course everybody wants those super fights. And by super fights, I'm talking about Quigg Frampton, I'm talking about Brooke Khan, I'm talking about DeGale Groves, even White against Price and White against Joshua. Joshua against Price and White against Joshua. But yeah, I think you're going to get them. You're going to get them. Just some take more time than others.
Do you think the Frampton Scott Quigg fight would take a huge blow if Scott Quigg didn't impress against Kiko Martinez?
Of course, or lost.
I didn't want to say that.
But he can lose in that fight, James. everyone knows how hard Kiko Martinez punches.
Especially
the amount of tweets I've had saying, I think Kiko will knock Scott Quigg out. Even Shane McGuigan. I saw his tweet saying, he's like certain Kiko will beat him. He might. And then we're all buggered, aren't we? We're all sitting there going, what have we done? But I can't,
Everyone thought he was finished the first time Frampton beat him. He then went on to
but it's a different Kiko now. Listen, I promoted the first Frampton Kiko fight. He weren't mentally in the right place. When he fought Frampton the second time, he was definitely more in the right place. He was coming off the back of some huge wins. He had good confidence. He's still got that confidence. You saw him at the press conference. He's walking around. He's got a few quid. He knows he can fight. He's operated at a good level. He's won a world title. So it's a tough fight. But it should be, because Quigg hasn't had enough tough fights over the last 12 months.
Who do you think Quigg's toughest opponent's been so far?
Well,
Salinas?
Yeah, definitely. Salinas is a quality fighter. No doubt about that. I actually had this argument with someone the other night on Twitter who was saying Frampton's boxed so many quality fighters compared to Quigg. And I said, go on then, name his top 4 opponents. And he said, Martinez, this is how he said, Martinez the first time, Martinez the second time, Avalos and Cazares. And I said, you can't name the same bloke twice. So he said, Martinez, Avalos, Cazares and Molitor. Right, now I did the Molitor fight. I didn't realise that Molitor was actually finished when he came over. I thought it was a great fight. Not taking anything away from Frampton's performance. And then they said, name Quigg's. And I said, Martinez, Salinas, Munro and Munyai. There's not a massive difference. Salinas, in my opinion, was better than Avalos, right? He's definitely better than Cazares, and he was definitely better than Molitor, and that's my 2 pick. So, what I'm trying to say is, James, none of this fucking matters. Do you know what I mean? Excuse my French. The fact is they've got to fight each other, but there's not a massive difference in the opposition level.
People like to dissect.
People say about Cazares. Cazares was a light flyweight. He won the world title at light fly. Moved up, won it at, I think, fly or super fly. I mean, but not. Listen, they're both brilliant fighters. Frampton's a brilliant fighter. So is Quig. We just got to get them in the ring together.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you giving me some of your time. I really do appreciate it. Have you got a lot of stick recently about fights and fighters getting injured and pulling off? Because it seems to be right across the board. There's been quite a few injuries.
Yeah, but even with Frank Warren, it's just it's been a frustrating little period actually, 6 months or so, and I feel like we're just coming out the back of it now. Touch wood, but we've got a lot of fighters ready to go. I mean, look, not being funny, you look at British boxing in May. You've got James DeGale fighting for the world title next week against Andre Dewar. I believe Andre Dewar. I believe you're coming.
I am indeed, sir.
You've got Amir Khan boxing Chris Algieri. You've got 3 world title fights involving 4 Brits on May the 30th. You've got Paul Smith fighting Andre Ward on June the 20th. You've got looks like Terry Flanagan challenging for the world title as well. You've got our massive show on July the 18th, our huge show here in Liverpool. British boxing's in a great place, Unfortunately, the highs and lows are tough because you build a great show, a couple of fights fall out, you get kicked in the nuts, you have to go through with it. Sometimes the show's not what it could have been, you get stick, and it's just life. You just wake up every day, you go to work and you work as hard as you can. And that doesn't matter if you're a boxing promoter, a bricklayer, a postman, or an IFL TV presenter. What else can you do in life? You wake up every morning, you work as hard as you can, you go to bed at night. As long as you're still breathing, nothing else matters.
Wise man once told me, don't let boxing make you bitter.
Is that me? Did I tell you that?
Could be.
Probably. It's very difficult not to. I'm hanging in there at the moment. But give me another 10 years, I'll be walking around like a miserable bastard.
Discussed this before.
Exactly.
Thanks for some time, mate.
All right, mate.
See you soon, mate.
Nice.